Hey there. Today I would like to talk to you about one of my all-time favorite cameras, the GX80, also known as the GX85. It's been a special camera to me. It's captured some of my favorite pictures that I have in my portfolio. Unfortunately, it broke after I accidentally dropped it a number of months ago, so that is a shame. But because it's gone and because I miss it so much, I think maybe it's time to make a video talking about why I liked it and why potentially it may be a camera that you end up liking. So, back in 2018, a photographer friend of ours based in Thailand, I can't pronounce his name, but I'll put his details or Flickr link in the description, donated this exact GX80 to us, to me, my brother. Because at the time, I think my Ricoh GR1 or 2 had broken, so it was essentially cameraless. And out of the grace of their heart, they donated me this camera. And I didn't know what to expect from it. I had never used a camera from Lumix before. I had used a Micro Four Thirds camera previously, but only had it for a short period of time. So I didn't really have too much of an opinion of these Micro Four Thirds cameras. And at the time, I was, only using Ricoh GRs, and I had previously used a Fuji X100S for a while, and before that I was using a Nikon D51 and D5300, so it's kind of more used to kind of these slightly bigger sensor cameras. Micro Four Thirds, as you know, is probably, it's not the same level of popularity it was like as 10 years ago, because nowadays, there's so many full-frame cameras on the market that are, well, relatively affordable, and then you also have the Fuji cameras, and unfortunately, due to a failure in marketing and innovation, these kind of cameras kind of fell to the bottom. But this camera, and I believe along with some other models, prove that even presently in 2025, that Micro Four Thirds, as long as they're used correctly, can pack as much punch as a full frame or an APS-C size camera. So let me talk about what I like about this camera. So first off, the build, the size is fantastic if you're into street photography. So again, this thing, I believe, let me see, I have it on a piece of paper, is only 426 grams. So it's light, easy to hold, doesn't weigh you down. You could easily wear it around your neck all day and not feel uncomfortable. It's comfortable to hold. It has a small bump of a grip here, so it's easy to hold. It feels great just with a single strap. This strap is originally, I think, from a Ricoh GR. And it's just so easy and comfortable to hold. It's a very agile piece of equipment. So the moment you hold this, so if you use the Ricoh GRs, right, you'll understand that feeling of kind of agile ninja feeling that you kind of get in your hand when you hold it, comparison to lots of other mirrorless cameras or DSLRs or whatever. Putting this in your hand, it just feels so agile. It feels like you could throw it around, and the other thing about it, it's not intimidating at all. Again, all of these factors make this such a fantastic street photography camera. The other thing that's great about this camera is that, at least from my experience, until I broke this dial, unfortunately, which got damaged, I believe, by water getting into the camera because I was shooting with the camera in the rain stupidly one day, or several days, but is you can easily single-handedly operate this camera. So you have a front dial there for your aperture, or you can make it your shutter, and you have a back dial when it's working where you can operate your shutter speed. What ended up happening when that dial broke, by the way, so if that ever happens to you, one thing that's great is because this camera has a touchscreen, is, well, of course I can't show you because the camera's broken, is you can actually adjust the shutter speed or aperture by using the touchscreen in the menu. So if you lose the dial, it's not like the camera's completely broken. It's got a hot shoot, which is great, which means you can do off-camera flash, and it's got a viewfinder. And I know a lot of people have complained, apparently, about this viewfinder. God, look at all my greasy finger marks. My hands are so greasy. This viewfinder apparently not being particularly good. I can't remember exactly why. God, it's so weird doing this mirror video thing. But in my opinion, it's a fantastic viewfinder for what you would be using it for. Like, it works more than good enough. It refreshes fast enough. It gives you a clear enough view of what you're shooting. And to me, it's a perfect size of a viewfinder. I actually found it to be a better viewfinder, in my opinion, than the one on my X100S, or in some ways even better than the viewfinder I currently have on my XS10. Not because the images are crisper, but I guess because maybe the size of the cup hole. So I wear glasses because of astigmatism in one of my eyes, and I notice with a lot of other cameras, when I'm wearing glasses, when I put the viewfinder up to my eyes, like it's really difficult, or it's easy to knock off the perspective and miss what you're seeing. But with this viewfinder, while wearing glasses, you know, it's very easy, here I'll put on glasses, for me to do this and easily see what I'm seeing because the viewfinder is big enough, the magnification is big enough. Whereas again, in other cameras I have, such as my XS10, which is a fantastic camera, the viewfinder, it's easy to mark it off and miss what you're seeing. It's hard for me to describe, but you know, it's easy for the viewfinder not to line up with your eye when you're wearing the glasses. So that's great. The other thing is it's got a tilty screen if you're into that, so that's very useful for your kind of angled shots or trying to be discreet or whatever. It's got a pop-up flash, which is awesome, so like that, it's very cute. And you can angle the flash, although I never use this. I just use my own off-camera flash because obviously that's not going to have much power to it. Again, very ergonomically a great camera. And the lens that I have on this camera is a lens that I love that you can get for a very good price, and it's sharp, it's versatile, it's got image stabilization built into it. It's the 12 to 32 Panasonic lens, which was a kit lens. The one thing against it is you can't manually focus with it because it doesn't have a manual focus ring, but the autofocus in these cameras is so good, you usually don't have to worry about manually focusing anyways. But basically it's a very compact lens, as you can see. I highly recommend this lens. You can get it for under $150. Again, it's very sharp in my opinion. It's very versatile, and I think 12 to 32 and 35 full frame equivalent would be like 24 to 50, I think it's like 24 to 50 or more than that. But anyways, very versatile lens. So again, when the lens is in use, it does extend like this, which I know isn't the sexiest looking thing in the world, but it's still very compact. So again, you can imagine wearing it like this on your chest. If you have the lens extended, it's still very small and very compact. And you're not really going to find a kit lens with that level of versatility at that size. And again, you can just close it up like this. There's other great lenses that match perfectly well with this camera, such as the very attractive Olympus 17mm, which is the equivalent to 35. You also have the Pancakes 14mm by Panasonic, which is a very small, very compact lens. That is quite sharp, and I do recommend that one, although I think optically this is a better lens, because I know some people compare the 14mm 2.5 to the Panasonic 12 to 32, and I think this is a better bargain. But the other one is great if you want something to make the camera as slim as possible. Again, if you had the 14mm in this, you could fit this into a jacket pocket very easily. Then there's also the Panasonic 15mm 1.7. I've used that lens as well. That's a very sharp lens. That lens has like the equivalent to 30mm. That's a really cool lens. It also has an aperture ring which works on the Panasonic cameras. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the aperture rings don't work on Olympus cameras. But anyways, back to the camera itself. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I have to say about the kind of build and everything else like this, but like, again, well, I'll say this. If you're into street photography, if you're looking for a nimble, versatile, agile camera, this fits the bill. Now, I guess one question to get into, well, before I get into that question, I'll talk about one thing that drove me nuts about Micro Four Thirds cameras that I don't like about these cameras, but thankfully you can resolve in the menu. I do not like the 4:3 aspect ratio. I find it too square. I find it too squint. You know, it's too boxy, in my opinion. And the 3:2 ratio that you get with APS-C sensor cameras and full frame cameras, I think is much more attractive to the eye. You know, it's more wide, whereas the 4:3 ratio is really square. And even if you have a great picture that's a 4:3 ratio, I think it will look a lot better in the 3:2 ratio because it's less boxed up. It looks a little bit more zoomed in and a little bit more natural to the eye. So when I first got the camera, I was, didn't know you could change the aspect ratio, and I stuck in that 4:3 ratio, the micro four thirds ratio, and I really did not like it. And I wasn't using the camera that much at first because my eye just didn't like the way it looked. It just, felt like my eyes were having to squint or kind of almost go cross-eye when I was looking at the image because it's just so comparatively square looking. But thankfully I found out that while I was shooting RAW or JPEG, you can adjust the aspect ratio to 3:2, which is way more natural to the eye. And after that, the camera became a whole new thing. So going into picture quality or image quality, which a lot of people worry about because this is I'll take off the lens here, a micro four thirds sensor, which is going to be a bit, I'm trying to get the light to hit the sensor, it's going to be quite a bit smaller. It's not hugely small. It's smaller than an APS-C sensor, and it's quite a bit smaller than a full frame sensor. And so because of that, there can be some compromises in image quality. And that mostly comes down to shooting at higher ISOs. So for example, I wouldn't recommend shooting this camera above 800, ISO 800. Now, the really good thing with this camera, it has built-in image stabilization, and so does this lens. So if you combine them, you have quite a lot of image stabilization. And I was able to take pretty sharp, very sharp photos at a 20th of a second, or even less than that. So, at ISO, at lower ISOs, like ISO 320, ISO 400, or whatever. So, if you're willing to deal with that, or, for example, I use flash a lot. So, for example, if I'm in a dark situation, I'm probably going to be using flash anyways. Or if I'm doing a low light situation and taking a picture, subjects will probably most likely be stagnant, like if you're taking pictures in a metro or something like this. But if you're wanting a camera to shoot at high ISOs, like really low light, and you're dealing with a lot of fast moving subjects, this camera's image quality will downgrade rapidly if you're shooting at ISO 1600 or 320. So keep that in mind. But if you're using flash or you're shooting at relatively lower ISOs and taking advantage of the image stabilization, the image quality, in my opinion, is still fantastic. It's not exactly on par to, for example, my Fuji XS10, because this is an older sensor, and it has slightly less resolution, and the Fuji sensor is slightly bigger. But one thing to know is somebody who has a lot of experiences with the Ricoh GR series, which are renowned for their fantastic image quality. This camera, with this lens, in certain lighting conditions, in my opinion, well, especially along with using flash, could match the Ricoh GR's image quality. Or at least almost match it. Maybe just slightly under. Almost match it, which is incredible. It is incredible because there's a lot of cameras I've used that have bigger sensors that can't even come close to the Ricoh GR's image quality. And this manages to do it with a flash or a low ISO in good lighting, or again using flash. Almost match the Ricoh GR 2 and 3, in my opinion. The other thing to note, by the way, that I forgot to mention, if you are shooting in low light, not all hope is lost. So for example, if you have to shoot at ISO 1600, there is noise lowering software on Lightroom, and it actually works very well. And I tried that on a number of kind of higher ISO files on this camera, and they looked brilliant. They didn't lose much in the way of sharpness. The files looked really clean. So yeah, fantastic camera, and you can, hear how much I do love and miss this thing. So I think the next thing for me to talk about is kind of the pictures I've taken with this camera, and some of my favorite pictures I've taken with this camera. I think that's kind of almost the best way to explore the benefits of having a camera like this, and why camera companies should be resurrecting, sorry, and creating new versions of the GX80. So now to go through some of the pictures I have taken with the Panasonic GX85, just to kind of give you a taste of what is capable with the camera. So first off, before I go through these images, all of them have been edited through Lightroom. Like that means edited as in like adjusting contrast, adjusting brightness, adjusting shadows, and adjusting saturation. So none of these are directly out of camera, though they're probably not too far off of the way they look because I don't edit that much. But anyways, so first off, I want to go over a image, or one of my favorite images of a doggy I have. So anyways, I was on Edinburgh's Princess Street and I was walking by the very famous Balmoral Hotel and passing by a taxi ring, right? And what happened is I saw this very unusual looking dog and its owner. And, you know, I spotted it from quite a bit away. And as you know, when you're doing street photography, you know, you'll eagle eye something and you're just like, that is my target. And I went rushing towards this individual and their bizarre looking dog. And, you know, I held up my Panasonic GX80 or 85 with the flash gun, not this exact one, but something like that. And, you know, the dog was on the ground and I got down on my knees and took the picture. And what was hilarious as I took the picture, I guess as the dog saw me, it went into this really bizarre kind of pose, as you can see here, where it has one of its paws or legs up and it's got its tongue hanging out of its mouth. And it was just the weirdest looking dog I think I'd ever seen. And it was hilarious that I had made this pose. And, you know, using the camera and the angled flash, it just really highlighted the weirdness and surrealness of this dog. As you can see, the extraordinary pattern and the lack of body hair and the weird hair growing out from the face and the hilarious tongue dripping from the mouth and the very zombie-like blue eyes, or beautiful blue eyes, are just glowing thanks to that. And this image, again, taken with the 12-32 kit lens, which you can get next to nothing, created a very sharp image. So the image quality is also very good, considering. And again, this goes back to that whole thing of like, if you're going to be shooting at lower ISOs, the image quality from this camera, they came out in 2016, should be absolutely satisfactory in the year of 2025. But yeah, I was one of my favorite pictures taken with this camera. The next image is a image which turned out to be kind of a self-portrait that I captured in Edinburgh's Botanical Gardens. So essentially there's kind of this kind of huge pond area with a bunch of lily pads and stuff, and there's a bunch of goldfish in there. And, you know, I saw the potential to make an image, and again, I used the flash gun with the camera and the 12-32 lens, and I put it at its widest setting of 12 millimeters, which would be the equivalent of 24. And on my knees again, as I like to be on, I started taking the picture using the angled flash so that it would capture the fish underneath the water without creating direct reflection, because if you had direct flash, it would just reflect back at you. But by angling the flash, it kind of bypasses that and allows, you know, was able to expose the fish swimming by. And it also captured a reflection of my face reflecting in the water, creating this kind of surreal image. So I took a bunch of those, and this is what I like the most. And it's an image I'm really happy with. It's surreal, it's weird, it's got mood and motion to it, and I just visually like the way it looks. So again, that's another kind of example of what you can capture with this combo. No, it's not the most detailed image in the world, and, you know, it's not the most full frame looking thing in the world, and, you know, it's kind of almost got a painterly look to it, and part of that's going to be due to the older sensor, which kind of has its charm, but it shows the capability of this combo. The next picture is probably my favorite picture taken with this camera overall, and I was on Princess Street in Edinburgh, or maybe I was on Frederick Street, which is one of the side streets, and this young individual walked by wearing this hat, or I saw him coming. He was coming in my direction, and I had, you know, the same camera set up, And, you know, he's coming, is a really dark, crappy, typical gray Edinburgh day. And, you know, just as he was passing by, I pulled up the camera, you know, and just literally he's just walking right by me in a very quick motion, and I just panned with him like this. I literally moved the camera at a lower shutter speed. I can't remember what the shutter speed was, and just moved and took that flash. And this is why you're kind of getting this weird sense of motion in that image. Again, you know, some of the colors, you know, I adjusted the colors and the shadows and lighting to a slight degree on Lightroom, and it created, well, that wouldn't have created, but anyways, it has this very kind of almost painterly look. And that is definitely something to stand out with this picture and the last picture, is that for whatever reason, something to do with the sensor can kind of almost create a painterly look. And there's pros and cons to that. But I think with this and the previous image, it definitely works in its favor to add to the surrealism. And having images that don't look too clinical, but rather more interesting or fun. The next picture was taken with this camera again, but it was this time taken with the Olympus 17mm, I think it's a 1.8 lens. Yeah, anyways, it's a really good lens. That lens is the equivalent, which is not this one, is the equivalent to 35mm. You can look this one up online. It's a really nice lens. It's really good. I prefer shooting 28, but in certain cases that lens was perfect. For example, with this picture, again, I was on Princess Street, and it was a rainy, windy, you know, cloud Sunday, right? Where the clouds and the sun are like coming back and forth in intervals and blah blah blah. And there is this you know, young woman wearing this, you know, very colorful set of clothes who was being blown away, essentially, and she had this cape that she was holding over her head, and it was just blowing all over the place. And it was one of those things where you could see the light was hitting a certain way, and like I just sprinted towards that subject and got the camera, and again, no flash in this one obviously, and you know, with that 35mm just clicked away, and I took like maybe like 5 or 6 pictures before that kind of moment ended, where she's in front of that shop that I'm not going to mention. But as you can see, the colors and the sharpness are great. Again, it went through Lightroom, and it was slightly edited with the contrast and lighting and such saturation, but I don't think it would have been too much different from what was in camera. But that picture really is like a testament to showing again how good the image quality can be. And it's not perfect. Again, if you zoom in pixel peep, you definitely will see it's not going to look like your Sony whatever full frame quality, right? It's not going, you're not going to be able to count every particle hover close, but why does that matter anyways? In the end, the picture is what matters, and this camera got me that picture and the other ones I showed you. So anyways, the point being is I hope that this video and those photographs showed you why I love and why I miss this camera, that unless the TikTokers and other YouTubers have already ruined it, you can get for a very good price, probably around, you still to get it cheaper than this, but probably around $500-600 in a used but new good condition type of thing. So again, camera I highly recommend you check it out. Again, if you're willing to work with lower ISOs and you can deal with shooting with lower ISOs, which you can do thanks to the image stabilization, or if you're going to use flash, highly recommend checking out the GX80. And I hope someday, but they probably won't because they're stupid, Panasonic or Lumix, whatever you want to call them, will bring this camera back and improve it, because it was a perfect camera ergonomically, perfect camera price-wise, perfect for street photography. And I can't think of a camera that is built better for street photography than this one. It only gets out-competed by other cameras like the X100 whatever and the GR whatever, due to them having more up-to-date, bigger sensors. But other than that, in my opinion, this camera beats both of those in most other ways. And just to also mention, because I didn't touch on it, this camera can do really good video, but it doesn't have a mic jack. So you can record a lot of good video, but you'll have to record the audio on something else. Anyways, thank you for joining me on this fun but hopeful experience of talking to you about this camera. Anyways, I hope you join me again for another video. Thank you very much, and goodbye.